Hello my fabulous lot, it's Mega Gran here again with another episode from my vintage story. Now then, I was doing a bit of cooking just before I started to do my smithing, and I was trying to get some stocks up to cover over the winter period because winter was coming. I was trying to be as nutritious as possible, but I'd used up the few cabbages I had, so I had to put in some onions, and I thought I had something else I could put in with that actually. I wondered, should I put onion in? No, I was going to go and try something different. Yep, I had some carrots, so those went in as well. And these would be for me to eat now, not for storage. I like to make sure I have 4 meals in a crock for storage. Now then, my anvil, it was cold and I could take it out. So I put it over next to the forge, but I wasn't standing in the right position to do it nice and neatly. And being able to place things sort of at an angle takes a bit of getting used to. And you know me, I'm all for a bit of symmetry. So I took my time, got myself straight and plopped it down in a more acceptable position. And I had my torch on hand, and all I needed to do now was to fire up the forge, which didn't take too long really. And I thought this was getting quite interesting and quite exciting as I picked up my first ingot and popped it on the forge and waited patiently for it to be heated to the right temperature so that I could do my smithing. I did have 3 other ingots upstairs, but I'd be doing things with those later. I needed my saw first. Haha, it was ready. Now the thing about me and games is that I try to use the same keys for the same things in different games. Only in this game, it really doesn't work. I had changed the select tool key to an N because I use F for my inventory. But this just wasn't working with a different key. And it didn't click at first. I just thought it wasn't working for me, wasn't this? I didn't have the select tool mode that showed me different modes that I could use. So I thought I'd just carry on with this one mode that I could use. And that's the one at the top there that shows you that you can move each one of these squares to the right. Which was working fine at first because all the ones that I wanted to move were moving to the right. Had to get to a different position, however, if I wanted it to move what would be upwards if I was stood right in front of it. But I turned round, and so it was to the right, and it worked. So that was fine. So I kept going. But then I had all these squares that I couldn't get rid of because I couldn't select another mode. So I went back into controls and I changed my inventory key to something other than F because that obviously was the problem. I chose Z, so I put that in, having bound the tool select mode back to F, which then worked perfectly and gave me all the options for the different modes I could select. But I'd faffed around so much that the metal had gone cold, so I had to put it back on the forge and wait for it to heat up again, which didn't take that long really. And then I set off, moving all the squares over to the opposite direction to what I've just moved them. I did think at one point if I lined them all up above the ones below that it would magically turn into a saw blade. What am I like? I'm a right numpty, aren't I, sometimes? I selected the option that chipped out the metal bits and proceeded to do that along this edge. And all the ones that I didn't want and didn't need were popped off. And then it did magically turn into a saw blade. Oh my goodness, I could make a saw! Once I'd finished though, I had to go back to F for my inventory. Otherwise, my fingers would be all over the place. It just wouldn't work for me. So there we go. But I had a saw. And Maddie had just been over to bring me some clothes because she was our tailor and she could make winter clothes and repair clothes. So that was fantastic. So I made her a saw blade as well. Maddie was going out to do a bit of hunting. So I got myself sorted to go out to hunt with her because it's always better in twos. Well, I think so anyway, with these wolves. And you never know what sort of a mess you can get yourself into. But these wolves are vicious. Maddie headed towards the east side of our houses. She felt that it was more open, less trees, and would be able to see things much better. Which, of course, was very true. There were little critters about, but there were also the odd wolf. But as Maddie predicted, we could see it clearly, so we set off to get rid of them. So we got ourselves up on some dirt and started aiming at the wolves. There was 2 of them, which wasn't unusual because they often spawned in packs. Oh, he was still moving about though. Well, that seemed to be that one sorted. The other one disappeared behind a tree. Whenever they start howling, I always get a feeling that they're calling for backup. So there was a little bit of urgency to get rid of it. It was quite a way away, so I had to get my eye in. Took a couple of shots, but eventually I was hitting it. Maddie had gone to the other side of the tree, but then it started coming back towards us. So Maddie moved herself and got on some blocks nearer to me. Now that looked like it had gone down. So we got off quite confident that we'd got rid of those 2 wolves. I needed some more stones though. I'd only got 1 left in my arsenal. But as Maddie went towards it, got up and started running. And she was soon in hot pursuit. And I was slowed down a bit by the pond, but I tried to catch up. I wasn't fast enough though. And it started heading for the trees, and that was never good. So we went as far as we dare, and then we gave it up as a bad job, and just hoped that it was far enough away not to want to come back. A little while later, Maddie spotted a boar. So she went up and gave it a swift poke with a spear, and ran off, hoping it would follow her into the pond, where it would be easy prey. But it was having none of it. So again, we took off in pursuit. But that boar was determined to get even for the earlier insult it had suffered. So I gave it a bit more. And after running after it a little way, I thought I'd chance my arm with throwing my spear. Unfortunately, Maddie passed me just at the wrong time, and unfortunately got the brunt end of my spear. And once she ate something, she continued in hot pursuit. 1 more time. I kept throwing my spear, but it kept slowing me down because I had to pick it up. I didn't want to lose it. So Maddie was much closer to it than I was. But then it did an about turn, because of all the hills around, I should imagine. And it ended going back the way that we'd come. And because I was behind, I was near enough to get it. I was glad I came in useful in the end. We looked around for some more prey, but all we came across were little clumps of vegetables, like these growing parsnips. And we came across some rye as well, so we marked them on the map to come back for later. And there were a few berry bushes around that had some ripe fruit on it, so I nabbed those as well. And we came across a lovely valley that was ripe for building on, and we ruminated over what could be built there. It was gorgeous. But the sun was going down and it was time to go back home before it got dark. On our journey back, we found another opportunity to get some boar meat. And it wasn't long before it was another forthcoming dinner. And then we spotted some iron just underneath the place where Maddie had killed the boar. So we went down for a closer look. There's quite a bit of quartz down there, but that was meteoritic iron. And you needed an iron tool to mine it. So that would come later. But it's certainly worth marking on the map. And it would be useful to come back with a prospecting pick once I'd made one, just to see what other ores were here. But alas, there was a temporal storm approaching, so we really needed to get out and get back home into safety. So we didn't waste any more time in getting back home. And it wasn't far. But I did want to get my saw made before the storm hit. And I'd need sticks for that. Just like most of the other tools, you just needed the head that you'd made out of whatever you made it from, and a stick to complete it. And there it was, my first saw. There was so much I could do with this. Well, the storm had come and gone, and with the moaning groans of the drifters in the background that I was totally ignoring, because I was chomping at the bit to do stuff with my saw. And there was so much that could be made once you started making the boards from the logs. But I was making so many different tools now, I needed some more shelving to put them on. And I put them on the nearest empty brick in the wall, thinking I would sort them out a little bit later. A bucket was the first thing I wanted, and to make that I needed some twine. And you make twine from flax fibres, and you get flax fibres from harvesting flax grown in the garden. You could also get flax fibres from harvesting dead drifters, but I hadn't done too much of that. You could also get them from loot vessels as well. Well, I was dying to give Maddie a bucket. I could hear quite a few groans from drifters somewhere about the place, but I couldn't see anything. And as I went to this end of the house, they were quite loud. And I thought they were probably underneath the house, and I wasn't going to go looking any closer. So I set off from the quieter end of the house with a few other useful bits to take to Maddie's. Maddie had built her little place a little more south on the lake. A similar situation to mine, and for similar reasons. To be safe. She was a busy little person, and she had a busy little place, a garden full of veggies. And she was very busy making clothes and mending them for all of us on the server. So I started tossing out all the useful bits and pieces that would be helpful with mending and making clothes. I hadn't done too much hunting of late, so I didn't have a lot of stuff, but I had some rawhide and I had some fat, and of course the all-important bucket. And I was quite glad to find out that I wasn't the only one that changed keybinds to help them with their gaming. Maddie was having problem placing water. Now, my bucket was new to me and I hadn't placed any water yet, but it was quite clear that the water wasn't being placed using the keys that were supposed to be used. So I filled my bucket and I had a go as well. And when using the control key, which was supposed to place the water, it placed the bucket instead. So it was obvious that something was a little bit amiss. So after tossing a few extra boards to Maddie so she could have a play with them, I went off to do a little bit of research to see if I could find out what was amiss. And it wasn't long before I found the answer. And it was down again to changing keybinds. I was using E for running, which was control in this game. And the default key for placing the water was the same, so I had to use E instead. And when I did, it placed the water. And it was the same for Maddie. She'd chosen a different key to use for sprint as well. The next time I played, both Or and Maddie were already on the server. It was early November and it was 4 degrees outside. It was just after 5 p.m, but it was already dark, and it said there was medium rift activity. So I checked around quite carefully to make sure there was nothing near me before going down into the garden to sort out my veggies. I'd placed the lantern that Or had given me in the middle of the garden, so it was plenty light for me to see. And I could see that quite a few of my veggies had matured. I didn't have a huge amount. And it was a bit disappointing to see that the cold had damaged some of them, so I wouldn't get as many when I harvested them. And I wasn't able to pick up as many seeds as I did before. The other two had been quite productive though. Or had got a bronze pickaxe. Thought that was quite interesting. I hadn't got there yet though. I was still just starting with my copper. And Maddie's chickens were laying eggs. That was awesome. And that started me off thinking about livestock. And really, I should get myself a little bit more organised, so I had a safer way of obtaining meat. And it wasn't till after I'd put away my veggies that I'd realised got windows. And I couldn't believe it. I'd been here so long and hadn't noticed. Oh my goodness. I did guess that it might have been Ore that did that. And my suspicions were correct. That was awesome. I loved them. And I thought that it was a bargain exchange for the fences that I'd put in. So now it was time to get back to my saw. And I could now make myself a proper door to put on my storage room. And I did find out quite a long time later that probably bunging up the holes instead of putting a door on would have been more effective in maintaining the temperature in my storage room and therefore prolong the life of the food that I stored in here. The next thing I was thinking about was shelving and more storage. I knew that you could make wooden chests because I'd seen other people with them. So that was quite interesting, and that was quite simple to make as well. And you could also make them with signs on. And signs were quite simple as well, with just 2 boards and a stick. But shelves are what I was after, and they were so simple. And I could make loads of them. So I made a few to see how they'd fit in my little storage room. And I must say, they fitted very well. And I would be able to fit so many more crocks on these shelves than I could do in the little baskets on the floor. I could probably fit things underneath the shelves as well. Maybe crocks, and I could fill them full of stuff as well. So I was visualising my little storage area crammed full of stock to see me through probably many winters. And I was getting quite excited about that. Oh, it felt so good to be getting organised and getting in front. Nice. Okay, so livestock. So I needed large troughs. And I thought I would make a pit and put some food in it, in troughs, and see if I could capture some livestock. Whether they be pigs or goats, I wasn't really bothered. I just wanted to make a start. So I went off to find a place to do that. And I thought, just across here, because there was no trees, I wouldn't have to fight off wolves. I think that might be a wolf in Maddie's pit, actually. She made a pit in the hope that it would stop a lot of wolves spawning. But I think somewhere here, I need to get rid of some of this grass first, I think. And I needed some dirt as well, because I thought I'd build it up from the floor rather than dig down. Then I placed some blocks to make the hole. I'd make steps on either side as well. And then I just needed to place some food in there. I didn't have large amounts, but it only needed a little bit of grain, I think, for the animals to actually know that it was there and wander in. Oh, I hoped. And that was it. And then I just needed to wait. The next time I went on the server, it had been snowing. And it looked gorgeous. Just look at that. Oh my goodness. And I couldn't wait to walk on the snow. Sun was going down though, so I needed to be quick. Oh, listen to that. That was awesome. Wow. So I made a beeline for my pit. Would there be something in? Nope. Nothing yet. But it hadn't been that long. And I couldn't stop looking at all this snow. It was so authentic. Even the variation in the weather from one place to another. It was gorgeous, it really was. I still wanted to catch fresh meat where I could. There's a lot less animals about in the winter. But I had a walk round the lake, and it wasn't long before I came across something I could have a go at. Sorry, goat, but I need your meat. It was so quiet. Several days later, I turned my thoughts to expanding my garden, and I thought I'd make use of all the berry bushes that I'd been collecting and make a little berry garden. And I thought I'd do that on the east side of my house. And just before I started, I thought I'd take another little peek at my pit. I tended to look at it every morning and every evening, but there'd been nothing. Not a single little bite. Would there be anything this day? And there it was. My first livestock. A ram. Nice. A bighorn ewe. But one is no good. I needed a ram as well. If I was going to have a herd, I needed one of each. So I left her in there and made sure I'd go look for something to feed her with. I'd need to keep something in those troughs now that something was in there. I hadn't really done much with this side of the house. I had thought of putting a chimney in, and I'm still thinking about doing that. And if I did put one in, it would probably be on this side of the house. And now that I had my saw and I could produce boards, I could have better looking fences. And then I had second thoughts because my other fences were rough hewn fences, and I didn't want to change them all, but I'd want them the same. So I stuck to the ones that I'd made already. And once I got to the stage where I stopped changing things around and stopped adding on, I'd change them all to the better type. I also needed to gather some medium fertility soil as well because I was running out. But for now, I think that size garden would do. Oh dear, there was no middle. So just off to one side would have to do for a gate. I didn't have that many bushes, but I had a few different types: cranberries, blueberries, red currant and black currant. And I didn't quite have enough space to fit them all in. But it didn't matter. These could wait till the spring, when I might expand. I was beginning to feel quite at home in my little house. There were still quite a few things I wanted to do. I needed to put a fireplace in. And I'd thought about a bridge over the water to the side where I'm going to put my livestock. I'd need to build some kind of barn, and I wanted a chicken coop as well. So I'll show you how I got on with some of that in the next episode. So take care everybody, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.